It was a frigid winter morning in New York City, the kind that turns every breath into a cloud of frost. The streets were alive with hurried footsteps and the relentless hum of the subway below. Amongst the sea of commuters rushing to their destinations, Officer James Carter, a seasoned cop known for his compassion, was wrapping up his routine patrol near the busy subway station. James moved through the familiar chaos of the city, his eyes scanning the crowd. That's when he noticed her. Sitting on a torn piece of cardboard near the corner of the station entrance was a small, fragile figure. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old. A worn-out blanket draped her shoulders as she shivered against the biting cold. Her face was streaked with dirt, and her oversized, mismatched clothes hung loosely on her tiny frame. But it wasn't her appearance that stopped James in his tracks. It was her eyes. Beneath the grime and exhaustion, they held a haunting depth, a silent plea for help. James adjusted his hat and approached her slowly, careful not to startle her. He crouched down to her level, his voice soft but steady. "Hey there, sweetie. Are you okay? Do you need any help?" The girl didn't answer. Her eyes darted around, scanning the street as if she was looking for someone or avoiding them. In her hands, she clutched a crumpled piece of paper, her small fingers trembling as she gripped it tightly. "It's okay," James said gently. "You're safe now. I'm here to help." He extended his hand, trying to reassure her. For a moment she hesitated, her body tense with fear. But then, with a shaky breath, she extended the note toward him. James took the paper carefully, unfolding it with a mix of curiosity and concern. As he read the scrawled, uneven handwriting, his expression shifted. His brows furrowed, and his heart sank. The words on the paper were written in a hurried, desperate hand. "Please help. I'm in danger. They're watching me." James looked back at the girl, who was now staring at him with wide, fearful eyes. Her hands were still trembling, clutching the edges of her worn blanket. Whoever they were, it was clear that this child was terrified, and James knew he had to act fast. James' heart raced as he reread the note. The hurried, shaky handwriting made every word feel heavy with urgency. He scanned the words again, trying to piece together the meaning. "Who wrote this?" he asked softly. The girl didn't reply. Her eyes welled with tears, and she stared at him as though she wanted to say something, but couldn't. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder, her movements sharp and nervous. It was as if she expected someone to appear at any moment. "All right," James said, keeping his voice calm. "Let's get you somewhere safe." He reached out to guide her toward his patrol car. But just as he did, she stiffened, her small body trembling. Her hands clutched her ragged blanket tightly, and her lips parted in a frightened whisper. "No! They'll find me!" James froze, crouching down to meet her eye level. "It's okay. No one's going to hurt you," he said, his tone firm yet reassuring. "I promise. But you need to trust me." For a long moment, the girl didn't move. Her chest rose and fell quickly, and her eyes darted between James and the street behind him. Finally, she gave a small, hesitant nod. As they drove toward the precinct, James kept stealing glances at her in the rearview mirror. She sat in the back seat, staring out the window with wide, fearful eyes. The way she kept glancing at every passing car made his own heart pound. Was someone following them? Was the danger as close as she feared? He replayed the note's words in his mind. "Please help. I'm in danger. They're watching me." Who was she talking about? What kind of danger was she in? And why did she trust him enough to hand him the note in the first place? James wanted to ask her more, to get even the smallest hint of what she was going through, but he knew better than to push. She was too shaken, too fragile. By the time they arrived at the station, James had a million questions and no answers. He helped her out of the car and led her inside, guiding her toward a quiet corner. "Here," he said, handing her a warm blanket and a cup of hot chocolate. She took them both silently, her hands trembling as she wrapped the blanket around herself. The steam from the cup rose in soft curls, but she didn't drink. She just stared down into it, her lips pressed tightly together. James sat down across from her, careful not to crowd her. "Can you tell me your name?" he asked gently. Her eyes flicked up to his face, then back down to the cup. "Lily," she whispered. It was the only word she said. "What about your last name? Or where you're from?" She shook her head, her fingers tightening around the cup. Every question seemed to make her retreat further into herself. James realized he was going to have to take a different approach. "Lily, it's okay. You don't have to say anything else right now," he said softly, "but I'm going to help you. I just need some time to figure things out." He stood up and walked over to his desk, retrieving a plastic evidence bag. Carefully, he placed the note inside and sealed it. If she wouldn't or couldn't talk, then the note was the next best lead. The words on that scrap of paper were the only clue he had. He knew he needed to take it to someone who could dig deeper. A few minutes later, he walked down the hall to Captain Lopez's office. Maria Lopez had been on the force for 2 decades. She was tough but fair, known for her ability to find answers where others saw dead ends. James knocked on her door and stepped inside. "Captain, I've got something you need to see." Lopez looked up from her computer, raising an eyebrow. "What's this?" James handed her the evidence bag, watching her face as she read the note inside. Her sharp eyes scanned the words, her brow furrowing with each line. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "A young girl. She handed it to me on my patrol. And she wouldn't say who wrote it? She only gave me her first name, Lily. Beyond that, she's too scared to say more." Lopez leaned back in her chair, tapping a pen against her desk. "Well, we'll start with the handwriting. Get it to forensics and see if they can identify anything. And keep an eye on that girl. If someone's after her, we need to know who." James nodded. "Understood." As he turned to leave, Lopez called after him. "James, be careful. If this is what I think it could go deeper than we want to imagine." James walked back to the main room, his thoughts racing. He glanced over at Lily, still sitting quietly in the corner. Her small figure looked even smaller under the blanket. Whatever was going on, James knew he couldn't let her down. He would find out who she was, who was after her, and why that note was so urgent. For now, all he could do was wait and hope the next clue wasn't far away. The precinct was abuzz as James shared the note with Captain Maria Lopez, a sharp and no-nonsense leader known for her unwavering dedication to justice. Maria's brows furrowed as she examined the note. "This isn't just some random plea for help," she said. "There's something bigger going on here." Maria ordered a team to analyze the handwriting and paper for any clues. Meanwhile, James focused on trying to build trust with Lily. Over the next few hours, bits and pieces of her story began to emerge. She mentioned a big house and a lady in red who scared her. But before she could say more, she clammed up again, clearly traumatized. Determined to make progress, James approached Captain Lopez again. "We need to dig deeper," he said. "I think Lily knows more than she's letting on." Lopez nodded. "I'll pull up any missing persons reports, matching the details she's given so far. In the meantime, keep working on building her trust." As the investigation unfolded, the handwriting analysis revealed something shocking. The note's handwriting matched a missing persons case from 3 years ago, a woman named Rachel Harper, who had vanished under mysterious circumstances. Rachel had been a journalist who was reportedly working on a major exposé involving human trafficking. The connection sent chills down James's spine. Could Lily be linked to Rachel? James sat at his desk, scrolling through the old case files. Photos of Rachel Harper stared back at him from the screen. Images of a confident, determined woman who had clearly been on the verge of exposing something dangerous. But she had disappeared before she could publish her story. Now, 3 years later, a note in her handwriting had surfaced, carried by a scared young girl who claimed to be in danger. "What do we know about Rachel's last movements?" James asked Maria as they reviewed the case together. Maria tapped her pen on the table. She was meeting with an anonymous source at a downtown cafe. Security footage showed her leaving the cafe, but after that, nothing. No phone calls, no sightings. Her car was found abandoned 2 days later. "And now we have a note," James said, holding it up. "What are the odds this is a coincidence?" "Very slim," Maria replied. "Let's get a forensic linguist to look at the phrasing, see if it matches any of Rachel's old articles or notes." Meanwhile, James spent more time with Lily, trying to make her feel comfortable. He brought her small treats, like a cup of ice cream or a stuffed animal from the precinct's donation bin. Slowly, she began to open up. She described the big house as having tall gates and a fountain in the driveway. The lady in red was always giving orders, always watching. But whenever James tried to press for more details, Lily would stop speaking, her face pale with fear. One evening, as James sat across from her, he said, "Lily, I know you're scared. I know you think someone's going to find you. But we're here to protect you. No one is going to hurt you while you're with us." Her eyes filled with tears and she nodded slightly. "The lady in red, she knows everything. She has people everywhere," Lily whispered. James felt a chill run down his spine. Whoever this lady in red was, she clearly held a terrifying amount of control. James relayed this information to Maria, who immediately ordered the team to run background checks on wealthy individuals or known figures who might fit Lily's description. As the days went on, more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Forensic linguistics confirmed that the writing style in the note was consistent with Rachel Harper's. A paper expert identified the stationery as a rare brand only sold in a handful of upscale stores. And a digital forensic analyst discovered that Rachel's old laptop, seized as evidence, contained a partially deleted draft of an article referencing a big house and a powerful woman in red. Maria leaned over James's desk, pointing to the evidence file. "We have Rachel's notes, her handwriting, and Lily's story, all pointing to the same place. We need to find that house. We need to find out who this lady in red really is." James nodded. "But we also need to be careful. If this woman is as powerful as Lily says, she'll know we're looking for her." Maria's face was grim. "Then we better work quickly. Lily's safety, and maybe a lot of others, depends on it." Determined to find answers, James and Maria dug deeper into Rachel Harper's disappearance. Rachel had been a journalist working on a major expose about a powerful corporation accused of human trafficking. She had spent months undercover, collecting damning evidence and preparing to blow the whistle on one of the country's most influential business empires. But just days before the story was set to publish, she vanished without a trace. Her car was found abandoned near a state park. Her phone was wiped clean, and her last known contact was a cryptic email to her editor saying, "I think they know." James felt a growing conviction that Lily was connected to Rachel's case. It wasn't just the note or the mention of a lady in red. It was the girl's palpable fear, her insistence that they were watching. Whoever they were, they had managed to silence a seasoned journalist. The possibility that they were now after a child made James's stomach turn. Back at the precinct, Maria pored over old police reports and FBI files on the corporation Rachel had been investigating. The company's public facade was impeccable: philanthropy events, scholarships, and eco-friendly initiatives. But beneath the surface, there were whispers of illegal operations, secret meetings, and connections to organized crime. Rachel's notes, recovered from her editor's encrypted email archives, hinted at a hidden pipeline where vulnerable individuals were trafficked under the guise of legitimate business deals. If Rachel had found solid proof, it would have been explosive enough to bring down the entire corporate empire. Late one night, James was reviewing the files when his phone buzzed. It was a text from the officer stationed at Lily's safe house. "Lily says she remembers something important. Says it's about Rachel." James grabbed his coat and headed out immediately. By the time he arrived at the safe house, Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. She looked up at James with wide, frightened eyes. "I saw her," Lily said quietly. "Saw who?" James asked gently. "Rachel. She was at the house, the big house." Lily's voice was barely above a whisper. "She was locked in a room upstairs. I brought her water once. I think they hurt her." James felt a chill run down his spine. "Lily, do you know what happened to her after that?" Lily shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "They took her away. I heard them say, they said she was going to disappear. And then she was gone." As Lily spoke, James pieced together a horrifying picture. Rachel hadn't just stumbled into danger, she had been deliberately silenced, and somehow Lily had been a witness. The next day, James and Maria assembled a team to raid the estate Lily described. With Lily's details and Rachel's notes as a guide, they obtained a warrant and prepared to search the sprawling property. The operation was tense. Armed officers surrounded the gates while forensic experts stood by, ready to collect any evidence that could link the house to Rachel's disappearance and the alleged trafficking operation. When the officers stormed the building, they found a labyrinth of locked rooms, hidden passageways, and encrypted computer servers. In one of the upstairs rooms, they discovered a charred notebook in the fireplace. Though damaged, the faint writing on the pages matched Rachel's handwriting. It included names, dates, and places, evidence that could unravel the corporation's entire network. They also found surveillance footage showing Rachel being led through the hallways, her face pale but determined. But there was no sign of her current whereabouts. As the search continued, they discovered documents linking the house to offshore accounts and shell companies. The lady in red Lily had described was identified as Veronica Steele, a high-ranking executive at the corporation. Veronica had a known history of using intimidation and violence to protect the company's secrets. She had been present in the house, overseeing the day-to-day operations of what appeared to be a sophisticated criminal enterprise. Lily's testimony and the recovered evidence painted a chilling picture of how the corporation used its power to silence dissenters. But more questions remained unanswered. If Rachel had been taken away, where was she now? Had she been killed, or was she being held somewhere else? James couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. Veronica Steele was nowhere to be found, and the deeper they dug, the more the risks increased. But one thing was certain: the truth about Rachel Harper and the secret world she had uncovered was finally beginning to come to light. Back at the precinct, Maria and the team uncovered more startling evidence. The lady in red Lily mentioned was identified as Veronica Steele, a high-ranking executive at the corporation Rachel had been investigating. Veronica had a history of silencing whistleblowers, and her connections ran deep. Witness testimonies and confidential documents revealed that Veronica had used everything from bribes to blackmail to keep her secrets safe. Her presence at the big house was no coincidence. She appeared to be the mastermind behind the entire operation. James and Maria knew they had to act quickly. Time was not on their side, and Veronica's influence made her a formidable opponent. The first step was obtaining a warrant to search one of the corporation's warehouses, a massive industrial complex rumored to be a front for their illegal activities. It had been mentioned in Rachel's notes and matched the description of a location Lily had overheard Veronica discussing. The raid was risky. The building was heavily secured, with high fences, surveillance cameras, and guards patrolling the perimeter. Maria led the briefing with the team. "We're walking into a hornet's nest," she said, "but we can't let Lily's courage go to waste. If we pull this off, we'll have enough evidence to take them down for good." As dawn broke, the team prepared to move in. James could feel the tension in the air. He had been on plenty of dangerous operations before, but this one carried a personal weight. Lily's bravery had given them a chance to expose the truth, and he couldn't let her down. When the officers stormed the warehouse, chaos erupted. The guards resisted, leading to a tense standoff. Tear gas canisters were deployed, and officers moved swiftly through the building, clearing rooms and securing hallways. Every corner was searched, every lock broken open. What they discovered inside was more horrifying than they had imagined. Behind the walls of what appeared to be a legitimate shipping facility was evidence of a full-scale trafficking operation. Rows of crates contained false bottom compartments filled with forged documents, cash, and untraceable IDs. Hidden chambers held detailed logs of individuals who had been transported under the guise of ordinary cargo shipments. Most chilling of all, they found a series of small rooms, hastily abandoned, where victims had been held. One by one, the officers guided dazed survivors to safety. Some were young children, trembling and silent. Others were adults, their faces etched with trauma. Medical teams were on standby, tending to the rescued victims. For James, it was a bittersweet victory. Lives had been saved, but the sheer scale of what had been happening in plain sight was deeply unsettling. In a locked office on the top floor, they found a key piece of evidence, a diary belonging to Rachel Harper. The pages were covered in her handwriting, outlining everything she had uncovered about the operation. Dates, names, shipping routes, and even descriptions of the big house Lily had mentioned. The diary confirmed that Rachel had been investigating the trafficking ring before her disappearance, and it provided a damning trail that pointed directly to Veronica Steele's involvement. James carefully bagged the diary as evidence. "We have her now," he said quietly, though he knew it wasn't that simple. Veronica Steele was not at the warehouse. She had vanished, leaving behind only the remnants of her operation. Her absence was both a relief and a frustration. The evidence they had gathered was enough to bring charges against the corporation, but without Veronica herself, the case still felt incomplete. Back at the precinct, Maria and James reviewed everything they had found. The diary, the logs, the forged documents. It was a treasure trove of information that would dismantle the corporation's facade. But Veronica Steele's shadow loomed large. "She's not going to stay hidden forever," Maria said. "She's too arrogant. She'll make a mistake." James nodded. "In the meantime, we'll keep building the case. She can run, but the truth is out now. She won't escape this forever." As the team prepared to release a statement to the media, James thought about Lily. Her courage had been the catalyst for everything. If she hadn't handed him that note, the victims in that warehouse might still be suffering. And while the battle wasn't over, they had taken a huge step forward. Veronica Steele's network was unraveling, and James knew that sooner or later, justice would catch up to her. The story broke nationwide, sending shockwaves across the country. Headlines in major newspapers and breaking news segments on television painted a vivid picture of the extraordinary case. Reporters detailed the brave actions of a young girl, the determined efforts of law enforcement, and the uncovering of a criminal network that had operated in the shadows for years. Lily's courage and James's relentless pursuit of the truth resonated deeply with the public, igniting a widespread conversation about human trafficking, corporate corruption, and the power of individual bravery. Within days, public protests erupted outside the corporation's headquarters. Activist groups organized rallies demanding stricter regulations and more transparency from large companies. Politicians, once hesitant to address the issue, now clamored to propose new laws and reforms. Lily's story became a catalyst for change, putting pressure on lawmakers to close legal loopholes and strengthen protections for victims of exploitation. Meanwhile, Veronica Steele remained at large. Her ability to evade capture, despite the mountain of evidence against her, frustrated investigators and angered the public. Tips poured into police hotlines, with sightings reported from different parts of the country and even abroad. Although the authorities had dismantled much of her network, the hunt for Steele became a top priority. Her face appeared on wanted posters, news broadcasts, and social media, turning her into a symbol of unpunished corporate malfeasance. Back in New York, Lily began her new life in a foster home that provided the care and stability she had never known before. She was enrolled in school, given access to counseling, and surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her well-being. James made it a point to visit her regularly, attending her school plays, helping her with homework, and showing up for her birthdays. Over time, he became more than just a friendly face. He became a father figure, someone Lily could trust and depend on. The scars of her past didn't disappear overnight, but Lily's resilience shone through. In the years that followed, she became an advocate for other children in similar situations. She spoke at events, sharing her story with audiences who were deeply moved by her courage. Her words inspired countless others to take action. Whether it was donating to anti-trafficking organizations, volunteering to help survivors, or pushing for stronger policies to prevent exploitation. James, too, found his life transformed by the case. What started as a routine day on patrol had turned into a mission that gave his work renewed purpose. He received commendations from his department, invitations to speak at law enforcement conferences, and even a book deal to tell his side of the story. But to James, the real reward was seeing Lily thrive. Knowing that he had played a part in giving her a future made all the long nights and difficult choices worthwhile. Over time, the case became a symbol of hope and resilience. Documentaries were made, and a feature film was produced, drawing even more attention to the issues it exposed. The public's understanding of human trafficking deepened, and the importance of protecting whistleblowers gained national attention. Lily's name became synonymous with bravery, a reminder that even the smallest voices could bring down the most powerful wrongdoers. While the scars of the past remained, they became a part of a larger story, a story that proved how hope could shine even in the darkest of times. Lily's bravery, James's determination, and the collective effort of countless individuals turned a moment of fear and uncertainty into a beacon of inspiration for a nation.